And we're live.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Holly Williams. I'm the Associate Superintendent for Mesa Public Schools, and I'm so happy that you could join us today. Today, our topic is what everybody is talking about, COVID and related situations in our schools. And I have with me Dr. James Driscoll, our Assistant Superintendent for HR, who's joining me to answer your questions and have a conversation about how we're tackling our mitigation strategies, how we're staffing our schools, and how we're working to keep students and staff members safe. So we welcome your questions, and we're glad you're here with us. Before we get going into the questions, I just want to remind you that we started this journey in March with this pandemic that has created new and challenging situations for our community, and we've worked together to find ways to keep our children in school. We have a Safe, Strong, Ready plan that includes our mitigation strategies and the work that we do to keep our schools safe through signage, through our actions, and the hard work of our teachers and our administrators who keep our children safe every day. I'd also like to give a shout out to our bus drivers, our food service workers, and our folks in operations who are the behind the scenes folks that I don't think get recognized enough. They are the people who literally keep us open. They keep the lights on, they keep the wheels moving. And so I'd like to thank them during this pandemic. They are working remarkable hours at a very high level to make sure that we are safe, that we have the supplies we need, that our children get to where they need to be, and that they're fed, and that they have food for the weekends and on the days that if they are not in school, if they're remote learners. So I want to say thank you to them because without them, we are not successful. So let's jump in. Dr. Driscoll, welcome. Thank you for being here today. I appreciate
Thank you for having me
here. So I'm going to jump in with the first question, and I'm going to take it, and then I'm going to throw one to you because I've got a couple here early. So one of them says, "Can you explain how to read the district dashboard? Sometimes the data on the dashboard doesn't match the letters we're receiving." So what I want to share with you is that we use our dashboard as a means to give you information about the 14 days period of that students have positivity or if adults have positivity in our schools. So you may see a letter in your school that is indicated that somebody in the building has tested positive for COVID, and you might not see it on the dashboard. The timing might just be off on that because we update the dashboard every Thursday morning. And if you get a letter on Friday and then you don't see the dashboard change, that's because you won't see that one catch up till the following Thursday. We follow the same cadence that the state is using for their county and state dashboards. And so our dashboard is designed to show you information about positive cases for the 14 days prior to the Thursday that we load it in there. Important for you to know that we use the letters to give you information so that you can make decisions about your students and watching them for symptoms. And so the next question kind of leads into that, James. I chose Inperson for my child when the data was much better. I'm no longer comfortable sending them to school, but the school is telling me I can't change. Can you tell me why?
Thank you for asking me that. So basically, when we did the survey to ask for your choice in what you wanted for your student, we basically staffed based on those choices. So if the school is telling you, hey, we can't do that, it's because we staffed our school based on the choices our parents made. Now, one thing I would tell you to do is to ask your principal or your site administrator, hey, can I get put on a wait list? Because as people like you and others might say, hey, I made this choice, but I might want to change. If the principal sees that, hey, we got a lot of people on a wait list, that might change the staffing in a different way as well. So I always say work with your administrator with that. The wait list is a good option I know a lot of schools have used. And as numbers change and people make changes, if we're able to accommodate them, most schools are trying to accommodate them the best they can.
Great. There's a question about substitutes coming in, James. It says, if a sub goes to different schools and tests positive, do all the schools get the info? So do you want to talk about the fact about subs going to many different schools, and I'll talk about the letter part?
Yes. Okay. So, whenever we have subs go to schools and if they test positive, we notify the schools that they came in contact with, just like we would do if another staff member, to make them aware of that. One of the things we tried to do is to basically mitigate our subs going to multiple schools. But I would tell you, and this is a plug for people out there, hey, we really need subs. And part of what we're running into is we don't have enough subs to cover in our schools. So if you are interested at all, you can give me a call here at our office, 472-0434, and that's 480-472-0434. Really, all you would need is if you have a bachelor's degree, and it could be in any field, in a fingerprint clearance card, we could get you rolling to be a sub in our district. So we really need you. But to answer that question again, yes, we do contact the schools that person, that substitute might have came in contact with if we get a positive test.
I think it's important for folks to know we also notify if any of the traveling teachers. So we have speech language pathologists who travel from school to school. We have music teachers who travel. We have lots of different people who to give a full experience to our students are in and out of the buildings. And if any of them test positive, yes, the school community is notified, and we do that through the letters. And we make sure that everybody who's been in the building is notified to the best of our ability. We ask folks to sign in so we can make sure to know who's there when. That includes somebody who comes to fix the roof, so that we can make sure that they're informed, or if they tested positive, that we know, okay, the guy who fixed the roof is the one that tested positive. So we make sure that we do the best we can to notify if staff or students have had the unfortunate situation where they've come in contact with somebody who's tested positive. So here's a question that I'll take. When will we know if our school is closing? So if you've been following along and you are an active viewer on Facebook Live, you know that we have adopted a school by school decision-making tree. And I'll just talk a little bit about that because I think it's important for folks to understand how we're handling COVID in Mesa. We take a look, we have a spreadsheet, and we use the county's data around our zip codes, as we have been looking all along. But we have additionally used our own dashboard and our own reporting devices to carefully monitor what's happening on a school by school basis. And so if we see a situation where we see an increased number of cases, let's say in a program or a classroom, then we make a decision about closing that classroom and moving them to remote for a short period of time, usually a 14-day quarantine, so that we can get that, hopefully get that classroom or program healthy. We've had to do that with high school sports teams. We've done it with some classrooms across the district, and we've done it with some specific programs. Students who receive service in a specific program, we've quarantined them for 14 days to make them safer. But we do that school by school, program by program. We don't do it by zip code. We don't do it by district, because we see that the school that perhaps has a high number of cases, the school next door might not. And so it doesn't make sense to apply the same rule to both schools. We take into consideration what's happening on that campus. So I'll give you an example. One of our schools is in remote learning right now, and that's Sousa Elementary. Some people asked me, well, why did you put it into remote learning? It had high cases, but couldn't you have done the alternating A-B schedule? And the answer to that was yes, if it had been a high number of student cases, because then we would have been able to spread the students out. But in this case, it was a high number of adult cases, and it made it difficult to staff the school in person. And so we felt the safest course of action would be to put the school into remote learning for 14 days to give everybody an opportunity to get well, and then to come back and be back into their learning. So we make those decisions school by school, situation by situation, so that we are making the best decision for the students and the teachers and the staff in those buildings. So the second part of that question, I went down a path that I need to go back to. When will we know? So we typically make decisions. I had somebody ask me, Holly, do you only make decisions on Thursday? Because that's when the dashboard comes out. And the answer to that is no. We make decisions day by day. So if I see a program that is starting to peak, then we hold a little meeting and we say, okay, what do we need to do to mitigate this? And then we make the decision. And so it could be a Monday, it could be a Tuesday, it could be any day of the week. It depends on when we know that there's a problem at that school. That's when we make those decisions. So we try to be very cognizant that doing things last minute is difficult and disruptive to families. But the reality is we want to try to mitigate as quickly as we can to keep as many people healthy and well as we can. Along those same lines, I'd like to share, I know some of you have asked our health departments today, well, the CDC changed their guidelines on how long you have to quarantine. And so are we going to change ours? And the answer to that is maybe. CDC changed their guidelines and they just came out today. We have a meeting tomorrow with County Health, and we anticipate them addressing our questions around, are they going to change their guidance? Because while the CDC guides what states do, the states then take that data and share it with the local authorities. And so every Thursday, the County Health Department holds a webinar that we attend, and they give school-specific guidance on how to interpret different things. And so I anticipate there being a change. I don't know that it will be tomorrow, but we will, as soon as we know what those new updated guidelines for quarantine will be, we will change our letters and make sure that we have the appropriate notifications. James, would you help me with this one? Why are exposed teachers allowed to be at school?
Oh, yes, I get this question quite a bit. So, an executive order, and you might see the language is called essential employees, essential workers. And the reason why we are able to do that is because teachers and educators are considered essential workers. And basically, how I explained it to a couple of my friends is if doctors and nurses were not at work, and they are essential workers too, the operation we couldn't go on. And so there are some that the government has deemed as essential workers, and our group education falls into that. So you can be a worker and be exposed as long as you're not showing symptoms and you're practicing our mitigation strategies, wearing a mask, social distancing as much as possible, 6 feet. You can be come to work because we are all deemed as essential workers. So that's why an exposed teacher could be at work. But the one thing I would say caveat is that they're not showing symptoms, because that's the big thing. If they're showing symptoms, then no, they cannot be at work. They should be at home following all their doctor's advice and our protocols as well.
Thank you for that. This is a good clarifying question. I'll take, is quarantine 14 calendar or school days? It's calendar days, not school days. And because of the Thanksgiving holiday that we just experienced with having several days where students were home, we are, if folks are being quarantined over that time, we are seeing that they are able to return here in the next week or so. So I'm thankful for the opportunity that we get kids back in school as quickly as possible. James, we had a follow-up question to the subs. It says lots of teachers are having to sub for other teachers, and that we shouldn't have to do that. Can you explain why that's happening, and maybe do a pitch for, hey, we need more subs?
Yes. So being a former junior high teacher who had to sub in other teachers' classrooms, I feel you on that. What really happens is, what I would tell people is the earlier we get absences into the system, the better we are at filling those positions. And so one of the things that we did in our office is we created on-site subs, kind of trying to be proactive before this happened. So that's one avenue that we do. Another avenue is to tell your folks, like, if they know they're going to be out early, put it in the system as soon as can, because we literally have about a 90% fill rate when it's in the system. The closer it is to the time that the absences occur, the more likely we're not going to be able to get subs in. Now, the next thing is we need more subs. And so I'll say that number again, 480-472-0434. We really do. Part of our problem that we're having is some of our subs that we have in our schools have actually contracted COVID. So now they're out and they're following our protocol. But other people are just saying, hey, I don't want to come in and sub. So if you're willing to sub, we need you. And teachers know that we're trying our best. Every day we're processing new subs into our system. And so at last check, I want to say from last week to this week, we will process over 50 new subs to our system. So we're constantly trying to get more subs in our system to cover these classes. But the best thing that a teacher can do for us is to get the absence in as soon as possible, because the sooner it's in, the more likely we are to fill it.
And we even have district personnel. James, do you want to talk about that a little bit, about how we're utilizing people who maybe typically don't work in the schools right now, who work at the district office, who are going out to help us with those?
Yes. So one of the things we've been doing now is I call it all hands on deck. And so we reached out to all our departments saying, hey, do you have people that can help us with subbing in our schools? And so we created a list in our own office. So when we see schools that have multiple people out, we're already deploying, knowing that they're not being filled. We're reaching out to our district departments and saying, hey, can you send James and Johnny over to Sousa. I use Sousa because you used them earlier. Sousa Elementary because we need them to have subs in the classroom. So we're actually deploying that as well. I probably, some of you teachers, I'll probably be on one of your campuses, I'm sure, this week, trying to help out and subbing as well. So we're all hands on deck because we know the important work that our teachers are doing. And like I said, I'm a former junior high teacher who used to have to sub on this prep a lot. I want you guys I'd rather have you guys prepping during that time than subbing. So we're trying our best to get as many subs in our system to help so that you don't have to sub on your preps.
Here's a question that I'll take. Why are only 2 cases an outbreak? I agree with you. That seems like such a low number when we're talking about the numbers we are. That outbreak definition is defined by the county as 2 unrelated cases. So, for example, if a brother and sister test positive and they both go, we'll use Sousa because we're using them today, we're picking on them. If both of them go, then that wouldn't be an outbreak because they are connected cases. We know where the exposure happened. But if there were 2 kids in the same class or 2 kids in the school that were not connected, then the county deems that as an outbreak. And so that's their language that they instruct us to use in our letters, and so that's how that's defined. Here's another question that I'll take. When will junior high sports and activities start up again? I don't have an answer for you on that. We are still in the conversation about that. AIA just recently gave us guidance on winter sports, and so we know that those started this week, and with competition starting in January, and they have limited spectators at this time. They have said that there'll be no spectators, I believe, is the decision right now. I don't know where they're at with that moving forward. So we're weighing those conversations out, and I know that it's an active conversation. I just don't have an answer today, but stay tuned. As soon as we know, we will share the information about junior high sports. James, here's another question I have that we had received earlier that I want to make sure we cover. My child is struggling so much in the remote model. She's not motivated. She never had the opportunity to talk to her teacher, and her grades are terrible. I really don't want her in person. So how can I help her in this remote model?
Oh, it breaks my heart as a former elementary principal. So what I would tell you is first reach out to your principal, your child's school, and say, hey, can we set a meeting with me, you, and the teacher to talk about my student? I always tell parents, I wish I was Nostradamus and I could know the future and stuff like that, but I can't. But I'm here to help, and all of us want to make sure that each student in our schools have the best possible learning environment. And so to hear that a student's struggling, if you haven't reached out to the teacher, I would reach out to the school administration and then set up a meeting so you can discuss what can we do to help. Is there ways that we can engage the student in the things they like? And that's the easiest thing I always find. If you can kind of connect them with stuff that they personally like to do, that's one way to get them engaged back and motivated in. But I would start off with the teacher and the school administration and see what they can do to come together, because it takes a village to do this amazing work that we're doing. And I know our administrators and our teachers are willing to do that and want the best for our students. So that's what I would recommend.
Thank you for that. I concur, and I think my high school lens. I used to be a high school principal. That I agree with that. I would give the same advice if no matter what grade student you have, is reach out to the principal and say, can we set up a meeting with and perhaps the counselor would be involved also. But what would spark some interest and help support the student better? I think getting all hands on deck, as James used earlier in an earlier example, would be a smart thing to do so that we can make sure that the support is wrapped around the student so that they can get re-engaged and find some success in the remote learning environment. We've gotten a couple questions about are we considering a split schedule, or what's going on with the schedule. So I want to address that, and then James, maybe you can add any thoughts that you have around that. We are, of course, we're watching the data, and as I shared earlier, we are paying attention to the data day to day, school by school, and looking for trends. So one of the questions is around a split schedule, and I'm gonna interpret that as an A/B schedule, and I'll tell you that we do that as a mitigation strategy. So I shared earlier that we would perhaps quarantine a classroom as a mitigation strategy, so to try and slow the spread. If we didn't see that working, so say we had a couple of classrooms at a school quarantined, and we still see positive cases popping among the students, the next thing we would do would be to put them on an A/B schedule so that we had fewer kids on campus to try and slow the spread. So it is something that is always considered, and a strategy that we're currently using at Mesa High to try to slow the spread there. They are currently on an A/B schedule for that exact purpose. Mesa's plans as far as what we're going to do, we're still in the conversations about that. We are looking at our data and waiting for the data tomorrow to show us. We know that we have zip codes that are an anomaly for us. We have one of our zip codes has a very high rate of out of 100,000. I think it's 513 out of 100,000 in the zip code. But the schools in that area have very low incidence of COVID. And so that when I say anomalies, those are the strange things that are happening where we know that it's in the community, but we don't see it in every school. We see it in some schools. And that's why we have we're having such success, we believe, in the school by school approach, which is to address each school and the needs of that school and make decisions about the health and safety of the students. James, do you want to add anything to that part?
You're more elegant at saying that than I would be. I ditto what she says, but I always just say with Dr. Forless, we're really looking at each school and making sure that we're doing our best to make educated decisions on how we educate our students. So we constantly look at the data. I've seen so much metric data. We constantly look at it. So it's always in the front of our minds, and we're trying to make decisions based off of it.
We're getting a question about the metrics being red, and so I want to touch on that a little bit. And the question is around if the metrics are red, why aren't we closing? And I will tell you that I as I've shared earlier, the metrics are red, but we also need to consider the cases in our schools, and so we are paying attention to both. And currently the state's guidance is if you have 3 reds, you should consider moving to remote. And if you have 2 reds, you should be planning. So folks are asking me, colleagues, are you planning? Are you planning? Of course we're planning because we're always looking at the data. And so we are putting specific schools into different learning models based on their school specific data. But we are using the zip code data to inform those decisions. James, somebody said all hands on deck doesn't sound like a great educational experience for kids. So do you want to talk about the value of being in person versus remote, and why all hands on deck does work? Because we have our educators who are actually planning for them, just like they would a sub day if they were sick in a normal year.
Yeah. So the reason to say all hands on deck, a lot of our people in district offices were teachers. Myself, I was a junior high math teacher as well as a 6th grade teachers in elementary. So a lot of our district people are actually educators and been educators. So when we send them and deploy them to the schools, you're actually having certified teachers in the classroom delivering the lessons. Now, if you ask me to go in a kindergarten classroom, I will apologize to you now. Yes, that doesn't sound like a great option. But 6th grade and up, yes, I would be a good option for you. But our teachers, whenever they're out, they actually have sub-lesson plans. So it's not when people come into the rooms, it's not like a willy-nilly, like, oh, we'll just make it up. There actually are lesson plans that guide our substitutes in what they're doing and trying to keep our students safe. I think you asked me the question about in-person and remote. For what I would tell you is every student is different. I would tell you a lot of our students, they benefit from being in person. My own daughter herself, she benefits from being in person and having that experience with her teacher. And so every student's different. I know of other students that benefit from remote and they love being in that setting and being in front of the computer. My daughter, it would not be the case. And so we constantly look at that because we're trying to create the best learning environment and the best learning experience for all our students. And so we're cognizant of that. The best thing for us is that they have their teacher in front of them on a daily basis. But guess what? Teachers get sick. And so that's why we say practice our mitigation strategies. Don't send your kids to school if they're sick, because there's a good chance they might get their teacher sick and stuff like that. So it takes all of us. I get it. The best, to answer that person's question, yes, the best person to be in front of students is that teacher who is assigned to that classroom by far. But we do have teachers that are sick, and they have families as well, and their kids are sick, so they have to stay home. And when they do, we try to get substitute, which is why we need substitutes. So I'll say it again, 480-472-0434. We really need you to help our students and help our community as well as we go through this. This is unprecedented times is what I always hear. It really is, and we need everybody. And so if you're available and willing and able, we would love to have you substitute here in Mesa Public Schools and to help us out.
I kind of feel like it's like a telethon, James, where we need that to go across every time you talk. We'll just scroll the telephone number across when you're talking.
I try to help these. I try to help our teachers.
I appreciate that.
So yes, I'm sorry if I sound like a broken record, but we really do need you.
No, I think it's great. We do, and we pay well. You should mention that we pay very well.
Yes, I would tell you I have friends in other districts who were mad at me. So our governing board did the awesome job of approving increases into our sub rates so that we can actually attract subs into our system. And so we actually pay better than any of our surrounding districts. And again, we value you, we need you, and we know that. And so we want to help. And it's a twofold, because if you're coming in helping us, that means teachers are getting their preps and they're able to prepare for their students in their class. So it's a very symbiotic relationship. And so again, 480-472-0434. Call us. We need you, and we will get you in our system as soon as possible.
Thanks for that. Here's a good question. Are we working with colleges and universities to ensure that our graduates can move on? I'm going to start, then I'm going to throw it to you because you were in an ASU meeting today too.
Yes.
So absolutely we are. That's an active thing that we do every year. I just sat on a panel today that met with students who are motivated to go to college and asking questions of superintendents, members of superintendent teams about how they should prepare to go there through completing the FAFSA, participating in the SAT, taking the right coursework. So very much that focus has not left. So much so that, lots of places have canceled holding the SAT. We have not. We still offer it for our students on Saturdays, and we have one coming up. But we have done it in a very, very safe, very closely mitigated circumstances. The room numbers will be fewer students in the room. There will be face masks, of course, required, lots of space between students. But we know that these tests like the SAT and ACT are an important part of the college application process. And we felt that by canceling them because of safety concerns would mean that there would be fewer opportunities for our students to pursue post high school opportunities. So James, do you want to talk about maybe some other ways that we're helping support our students getting ready into the workforce?
Yeah, I would tell you, selfishly here in HR, we're trying to recruit our students to go into the education. And so we're looking at creating pathways for them to leave our schools and go through either MCC or ASU or any university they want, and try to get them to come back and work for us here in Mesa Public Schools. We work with all the universities, local and community colleges, to provide services. We have counselors from our community colleges that are on our high school campuses. And we're constantly looking for ways to make sure that our students are getting access to everything they need so they can be successful when they graduate from us. Not only our students that are going the college route, but also our students that are going into career and want to do some community engagement route. So we constantly look for ways to get scholarships into their hands, to give them access to the people they need. And I have universities that call us like, hey, we need people. Hey, we want you. So we create virtual fairs for them as well to make sure we help our students get access to the universities and colleges.
Great. Thank you. Okay, we are close to our ending time, and I just wanted to say thank you to Dr. Driscoll for being here today. I wanted to do one last shout out to all of our teachers, our principals, and of course our support staff who are making the best opportunities for our students happen day to day. Without the great people of Mesa Public Schools, this community, and the families who support us, we wouldn't be able to do the great things we are. So I would like to encourage our families to continue to practice safe COVID like behaviors. Please limit your large gatherings. Please make sure you're consciously wearing your face mask, that you're using hand sanitizer, and that you're staying apart as often as you can. And please, 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 if your student is showing any symptoms, please keep them home. And out of safety for everybody, if you feel like you need to be tested, we have information on testing. And I'd like to thank you for joining us today. And I wish you all the very best. And Cody, I think we have some information to share. Do you have the last slide that we can share for folks if they want further information about our Safe, Strong, and Ready plan? So here's the resources in Mesa Public Schools. They're on our main page. So please access those for any information that you need. And again, thank you for joining us today. Bye-bye.